We're in the Bassmaster studios today talking to Brian Snowden about jerkbaits. There's a lot of different factors that go into jerkbaits. If you're going into a tackle shop for the first time, there's a lot of different bill styles, a lot of different depths, a lot of colors. Some jerkbaits have 3 hooks, some have 2 hooks. How do you go about choosing maybe a simplified approach to color selection and style when you're choosing a jerkbait?
Well, I definitely kind of try and keep it simple. I basically got a few shad colors. I like some translucent ones for real clear water, a little bit more flash, you know, a little off-colored water or cloudy days. And then when we go up north, when the smallmouth, they like to feed on perch a lot, so I'm gonna have something that definitely looks like a perch. Size-wise, I really like the 3-hook ones the best. I tend to throw them 95% of the time. The only time I really ever use a 2-hook or smaller version is if I see real tiny bait moving around. But I just prefer the bigger baits, and I seem to do a lot better with those. But if you see a lot of real small shad around, then you can definitely downsize, and those are gonna be your small 2-hook style of jerkbaits. It's real simple for me. I keep these basically everywhere I go. I take these with me because, you know, anytime the fish are schooling around shad or, you know, over the top of grass, they work in a variety of different situations, from the dead of winter all through the summer months. And I basically kind of do that by how the bait works, which ones I'm going to use for the warmer water and which ones I'm going to use for the cooler water. When the water's real warm, like say we're up at Thousand Islands up north, I'm going to use something like the B.A.S. 110. Basically, it's got some great action. You can move the bait relatively fast, and it keeps that action. This one right here. This one is got a little rounded lip. Doesn't dive but about 3 or 4 feet, but it's got a great side-to-side action. Really triggers those smallmouth, you know, because it moves almost like a Czar spook under the water. If everyone's ever thrown a top water, moves erratically, really triggers those smallmouth, and you can move it fast, and you can keep it going. So you can have a lot of speed, and a lot of times that's very important when triggering those smallmouth to bite. So then we move on to something like as the water starts to cool down, like what we have, you know, it's almost December, it's almost January, fall. I'm gonna switch to something like the Spro. The reason why I like the Spro is it's got a little more of a rolling action, a little more subtle action. So as the water temperature cools down, this bait is gonna be my choice. And the reason why I like to use it is that it's down there a little deeper, 6, 7 feet, 8 feet at the most, but it's got a more subtle action. It still goes side to side, but definitely not as erratic as this, but it also gets deeper. So as that water continues to cool, those fish might suspend out over timber or move out a little bit. That's when this is gonna come into play.
And then obviously, those winter months, you know, not just early winter, but when those fish get to maybe the ends of points or those deeper spots, you can still catch them on a jerkbait, and that's when maybe you'll throw the deep diving version of these.
Right, and my favorite, because it works really well, it's easy to cast, it doesn't have a real huge bill, but it gets down 11 to 13 feet, is the B.A.S. 110 plus 1. Lucky Craft makes a nice deep diving version as well. But these are more of a very slow. You want to bring that bait, get it down. Usually do that with the reel to get it down to its maximum depth. Then you're going to twitch it just a few times and maybe even pull it. The one problem you have with this is if you do a lot of twitching, a lot of times it's going to raise that front up. And when it raises that front up, it starts to rob the depth. So you do a lot more pull with the rod than the twitch.
And that's what I was going to ask. There's a lot of cadences. We saw in 2017, it seemed like every Elite Series event, there was a jerkbait factoring somewhere. So a lot of those guys maybe were just constantly jerking to get the reaction strikes, obviously in that, you know, May, June when those fish are feeding. What is your cadence gonna be like? You just explained that deep diving jerkbait, you're gonna be more of a sweeping, a dragging action instead of a quick jerks because it'll rob the depth. With these other ones, how do you tell when you pause them, how long to pause? There's a lot of different factors for folks who don't throw a jerkbait much.
Well, the biggest one seems to be like when you're throwing at the beginning of the winter, and it's a lot of it's trial and error. And one of the things I want everyone to remember, you know, as that water cools down and then the shad start to die, that's really what this, you know, in the Ozarks, that's where this kind of came to be. And we were weighting these and getting them to before they were suspending right from the manufacturer, we would weight these to mimic those dying shad. And so, you know, sometimes you'll watch those shad and they very slowly move, fall, you know, they start fluttering and then they go down a little bit and then they move again. So it could be a long pause. It could be, most of the time, it's a 5 to 10 second pause. So I like to move the bait 2 or 3 times, get that bait to move side to side, then I sit, and then it sit, and then I'll move it again. But there's no, it's all trial and error. because the fish might be in a little more aggressive mood, there might be a little more wind, water might be a little clearer so they can see it better. So a lot of that is all trial and error. But I will tell you, this bait, you can see a lot smaller bill, you're gonna be able to move this one a lot quicker, have a lot better action at high speeds. This bill, you can move fairly quick, and this one's gonna be the slowest one. And you can do that all based on the bill length. As that bill gets longer, you really have to slow that cadence down.